Welcome, everyone. Let's begin our meeting. Let's begin with a pledge of allegiance to the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, would those, our wonderful representatives from middle school come up and tell us what's going on?
Hello, I'm Celia Bergdahl. I'm on the Moose team and I'm in 8th grade. In 6th grade math on Katahdin, they are involved in a performance task assessment describing a cereal box to volume and surface area. In 7th grade math, they are finishing up their first unit about operations and ratio numbers. In 8th grade math, they are getting ready for their assessment on functions and linear equations. For ELA on Katahdin, they just finished preparing spooky stories. They have also been listening to pop songs and identifying the theme. Students continue to read books of their choice as they aim for the right fit. On the Moose team, for 6th grade math, they are finishing a unit on area volume and surface area. They will be moving on to ratios soon. In 7th grade math, they are working on expressions, equations, and distributive properties. In 8th grade math, they are working on functions and preparing for their post-assessment. Ms. Tucker's core class is called Myth Busting. We are trying to figure out if certain sources are valid. We are using tools to find more information about pictures and topics. In Ms. Turcotte's core class, we are learning how to manage our money. In Ms. Bickford's core class, we are learning about the government and voting. And once a week, we choose a topic to debate about. In the reader's workshop, we are reading a book called Home of the Brave. At the moment, we are discussing setting and conflict. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Carter. I'm representing Acadia and Sebago. So on Acadia Math with Mrs. Corrigan, the 6th grade has just finished up calculating the volume and surface area of shapes as well as learning the uses of this. 7th grade has just started their expressions unit. They're learning how to they're learning about factoring and the distributive property. 8th grade is learning about the Pythagorean theorem and its uses in proving a triangle is a right triangle. They're designing and building their own tools to use for finding right triangles. For homework, we do things like Prodigy Math or Dreambox. Meanwhile, in ELA with Mrs. Rosner, we are working on cause and effect and as well as research skills. Our ultimate goal is to write historical narratives. We are also learning about tension in writing and how to advance characters. In our core classes with Mr. Holman, we have been learning about Native American and European conflict, as well as watching and writing about Jared Diamond's Guns, Germs, and Steel. Guns, Germs, and Steel is about how some countries rose to power and some didn't, based on geographical advantages. In addition to this, we're learning about factors that changed how wars ended and countries took over others. So on Sebago, they were writing spooky stories just in time for Halloween. In their exploration class, they are learning about the Earth's rotation and how this affects the seasons. In their hands-on class at the workshop, they are taking some time to work individually on cool art projects like hydro dipping, the practice of transferring designs via water, wood burning, also known as pyrography. They're making cool freehand designs by making detailed burns of wood and making awesome string art by hitting nails into wood, then wrapping different color strings around it to create intricate designs. So in math, they're designing haunted houses and mazes and scaling them up and down. as well as learning positive and negative integers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Joseph Kuchar, here to report about the Royal River team and school-wide / student government. For Miss Jules' class, we have been talking about the history of animal evolution and how fossils have affected it. In Ms. Ryder's class, we're talking about evolution as well. As a project, we've been learning how to practice, where we get to make decisions in it. In Miss Tracy's class, we've been talking about craters and how they show us information about the moon. In Mrazik's survival writing, we've been writing short stories about things that have happened to us or that are completely fictional. For school, the girls' soccer team won the championship this year undefeated. Basketball practice has started. And that's all to report on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Before you guys start for the high school, go ahead up. Thank you so much. Before you start, I forgot a couple of announcements. Sorry. One is we do ask on school grounds that everyone wear masks. That is for safety of everyone and is a requirement for attendance to school board meetings also. We're on the school grounds. And then also for public comments. After the representatives, we have time for public comments. And if you want to make something, please sign up on the sheet up in front. Thank you for waiting. Now for the high school.
Okay, so I'm Morgan. I'm just going to give a quick rundown on some student senate stuff. So our sustainability committee has been working on the mural that they have inside our school. Our outreach committee is currently planning the community breakfast, as well as a new idea, which is the parents' night out. It would allow parents to go out shopping for the holidays and such, and we would have student volunteers watch the kids. Student Voice has been working on to update the Student Senate bulletin board that we have. And they're also soon going to be planning their Eurosphere dance. Our school spirit committee has been working to create new Bear Cave t-shirts. And they also have begun planning for Winter Carnival. And Health Center committee has been working most recently on developing a promotional and informational video on their committee.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm a sophomore, and I'm going to be talking about council and extracurricular. So council has been talking about the general issue of lack of underclassmen involved in student senate. Iliad, the Odyssey, and all of Greek mythology in 99 minutes or less has their opening night tomorrow night, and that's all.
Thank you so much. Do we have any citizens' comments? We do have a few people signed up. That's wonderful. It's so important to hear from everyone. The first one is Cristobal Alvarado.
For the ground rules, am I allowed to take my mask off to speak, or do I need to keep it on?
At this point, please try to keep it on.
Okay. So that's a good segue, because one of the questions I have for the board is when are we going to start actually evaluating real data and real evidence to guide our policies? Because I do have an advanced medical degree and other degrees, but it doesn't take an advanced degree to look on your television and look at football games where 80,000 people are in a stadium without a mask, and there are no super spreader events that are coming from that. And yet we still have this ridiculous policy of making our children wear masks at school when they're trying to learn. Is there any data that supports this mask policy that you can cite? The last board meeting that I came to back in September, I cited a study that was done by the Danish government, a randomized controlled study that we've all learned is the gold standard, with multiple thousands of people in each arm, that showed no benefit for masks. And yet that gets ignored. Because of what? Anecdotal evidence, or because somebody says that we should wear masks? I mean, it's really very frustrating to have a board like you just not look at data. I mean, you base all of your decisions on anecdote without any evidence behind it whatsoever. And when is that going to change? The last meeting I came to, there was all sorts of exaggerations from people, so-called medical professionals, saying our hospitals are overflowing. And yet the following week, Dr. Shah himself debunked that by talking about how there were not many people in hospitals. And certainly we still haven't had a pediatric death from COVID. But we're rushing in contravention to all the evidence to vaccinate our children. So, I'm not sure why we're continuing to go down this path and not reconsider. And the essence of science is to question your previously held conclusions in light of data that emerges. And we're not doing that. We tell our kids that they need to learn, and they need to learn from their mistakes. And yet we're not doing that as adults. So we're not setting a good example, because we're not reevaluating the previously held conclusions that are now clearly wrong. So, I don't know if I'm going to convince anybody. I think everyone's pretty well set in their ways. The one board member who seemed to be sympathetic is now not on the board. I don't even know why. Kelty has actually received many of my questions. I mean, it's kind of artificial to sit up here and talk for 3 or 4 minutes when this is a conversation that needs hours. And yet hours are never devoted. And there never seems to be a forum where people who are experienced and have knowledge can come and talk together and set policies that make sense. It always seems to be dictated by people who really don't have any experience or expertise. So, as you can tell, I'm very frustrated by this. I hope that, we have some sort of a constructive conversation. I think we're harming our children. And I think we're harming them in ways that we're not going to figure out for 4 or 5 years. I mean, you read about kids who have speech problems, like my daughter. She comes here and she wears a mask all day, so she can't pick up the nonverbal cues from her teacher. And there doesn't seem to be any sense of, let's do something that's smart instead of acting like a sledgehammer with one approach that fits everything. And that really is the problem with vaccination. I mean, I think vaccinations are wonderful. I would have inoculated my own mom, because for an older person who's in an assisted living facility, it's a lifesaver. But just like I wouldn't give chemotherapy to somebody who doesn't have cancer, why would we give a vaccine to a child who, by virtue of being a child, has an immune system that's robust and can handle the virus all on its own? There hasn't been a single death from pediatric COVID in Maine. And yet we're giving our kids this injection that we have no idea what it's going to do. There's been no studies long-term on it. The EUA that was obtained by Pfizer was based on preliminary studies done over 4 or 5 months in about 3,000 kids because children were excluded from all the preliminary trials. But yet we take that as gospel because people with intense conflicts of interest said, no, we can give it to kids. So, I think that we have to have a much deeper discussion, and it's not the type of discussion you can have in 5 minutes when somebody comes up and gives a comment. It's something that takes a much deeper discussion. And I'd love to see when that's going to occur.
Thank you for sharing and for advising us. Next, we have John Harper.
Summarize my 4 points very quickly. Buck the bureaucratic buffoonery. Quit the quarantine quagmire. Mangle the mask mandates. And build community immunity. Hopefully, maybe those will resonate with you. Now, I'll be a little bit more specific. I really believe in you as a local board, and I believe in you people, and I believe you have common sense. And I think it's time, as this gentleman said, that the board talk about these things using your common sense. I think it's time we recognize that the CDC and the bureaucrats in Washington don't know what they're doing. And they're passing down these mandates to us. Last year it failed. Now this year we're going back to quarantining and taking the kids out of school. It failed last year. You didn't even want to do off-site learning this year. You want to keep kids in school. We're doing it again. It failed. The bureaucrats in Washington want to keep doing this. But I know you have common sense. And I think it's time we have that discussion. And I know you know what's going on here better than they do. I call them bureaucratic buffoons. And I believe that because there's been many, many other things they've been doing. So that's the thing. Bring back local common sense. And I think you folks have it. Quit the quarantine quagmire. There's hundreds and hundreds of schools around the U.S. that aren't quarantining anymore. Now, I don't know if any of you saw the Senate hearing last week. The CDC director was pushed by the Massachusetts senator and Senator Collins. And they said, Massachusetts gave up on quarantine. We're leaving the kids in school. If somebody's a close contact, we will test them after 5 days. In Fulton, Missouri, I talked to the nurse last week. What they were doing is leaving the kids in school, no masks, by the way, leaving the kids in school, but if there was a close contact, they were monitoring them, temperatures, every day, temperatures. And they even have temperature monitors in the hallway. That's how they could tell if a close contact might have a case. So the senators asked the CDC director, these other states, now they're not following your recommendations. What are you going to do? Oh, well, we're going to study it. We're going to study it. Yeah, Massachusetts is way ahead of them. Missouri, way ahead of them. You, with your common sense, can be way ahead now. And the data's out there. The data's out there now. So you don't need to quarantine. There's a way to go around it. Stay in school and test if necessary after 5 days. I know you're talking about the pool testing. You don't even have to go there. You really don't even have to go there. You go to individual temperature testing every day. Mangle the mask mandates. I think you've heard me ad infinitum on this issue. You heard this gentleman say it. I wanted to observe one thing tonight. The young man who was there talking to you every 2 seconds. Every 2 seconds. The next speaker came up. And by the way, there's this and then this and then this. The next speaker came up and, well, boom, infection, if in fact he had it. Now just imagine 800 students in this school doing that all day. with masks that don't even work. They don't even work. How many of you actually looked at my email and the little video that I sent? Did anybody? Thank you. Thank you for looking at it. So I think here's my challenge to you. You did 2 months worth of masking, satisfying this half of the school. Why not go 2 months optional masking? Let the parents decide for 2 months, so you can satisfy this half of the school and do a little test. Fulton and other schools, I've watched their homecoming this fall. They have videos on the line, you know. They have optional masking. 3/4 of the kids weren't masked, having a grand old time. There were some kids that were masked. Nobody was bullying them. They were truly having fun, and the kids that were masked, because probably the parents said they wanted to mask them, they were having fun too. I think you could try parent choice for 2 months and see what happens. And by the way, Fulton had their share of COVID as well there, but they dealt with it just like I know you could. Build community immunity, and I've said this time and time again, but I just want to make another point on this. And this gentleman had a good point. You know, maybe we should have a couple of workshops on some of this stuff to help educate and change some thing. This pill right here, 10 cents, vitamin D, 5,000 IUs. 5,000 IUs builds immunity in your system and reduces the amount of COVID and reduces the potential to get infection. 5,000 IUs a day. 10 cents a day. Add this little pill, zinc and selenium, and you get more power out of this vitamin D. And again, the zinc helps to keep infections from happening. Add a mouthwash twice a day. Have the kids mouthwash twice a day with a particular mouthwash. You will kill any virus in their throats. The virus comes in through the throat and the nose. Add a nasal mist twice a day. Have the kids do that. You're going to be killing the virus. They have natural good immunity systems anyways. 10 to 15 cents a day, folks, and you're going to get a heck of a lot more out of than this mask. But I agree. It takes education and it takes some time to understand that these are the things that are out there that have already been proven, and we just need time to do it. So thank you for taking the time again for listening to me tonight. And I hope you will end the quarantining and the mask mandates at least for 2 months. Let's see what happens and come up with something else to keep the kids in school and get rid of the problems the kids are going to have going down the road that you know, and the teachers already know, and the parents know are already happening. Thanks. Thanks again.
Thank you for taking your time. Laurel Parker.
I'm Laurel Parker. I'm from Manchester. I am in the emergency room almost every day, working on the front lines of this pandemic. I've spoken at every meeting. I come to every meeting because I feel that this is important. We need to do whatever we can to protect our children. I said it again. I said it before. I'll say it again. I have never seen a complication of wearing a mask. I've seen lots of really sick people with COVID. Thankfully, we haven't had any pediatric deaths in the state of Maine, but there have been pediatric deaths in the country, in the nation, across the world. To me, even one is too many. If we can protect our children in any way until we can get them fully vaccinated, I think that's our job. I mean, that's what the board's job is to keep our kids and our staff and our community safe. Again, I have never seen a problem with wearing a mask. I haven't seen any complications. I've seen lots of COVID. I see it every day. I see a healthcare system on its knees at its breaking point. People in healthcare are exhausted. We have been doing this now for far too long. doing whatever we can to save the lives of those people, whether they believe in whatever is going on in the world. I'm sorry, if you don't believe in COVID, it still is a real medical problem. I've said it to so many people. This should not be a political matter. This is a virus. This is a pandemic. This is a medical problem. The CDC still recommends masking universally in schools. These are not bureaucrats. These are medical professionals. That's where I want to get my science from. These are the best of the best across the country. It is, you know, the CDC, everyone, we're all adapting all the time. I tell people, you know, in the beginning of the pandemic, I felt like a reporter going around to my staff. This just in, we're doing this. We are adapting. We're continually adapting. We're doing the best we can, but we need whatever help we can from the public. I was in tears for 3 separate cases last week for a variety of reasons that I can't go into. I see it on my staff every day. Please, let's keep the course. It is working. Yes, there have been closures. Yes, there have been cases. But luckily, I don't believe there's been much in-school transmission because the things that we have in place, the safeguards we have in place are working. Keep going. We're getting so close. My kids are a week and a half into their first shot. They'll be fully vaccinated by Christmas. It's such a good feeling. And whatever we can do to keep it up for just a little bit longer. I appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. School buses, I thought windows were supposed to be open. I know it's getting cold. I've noticed they haven't been open. I know they're overcrowded and busy and short, and I appreciate all they're doing, but I haven't noticed the windows open lately. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee, for caring. We have a few more people that would like to speak. Amanda, I apologize. Amanda, would you put, thank you.
I have a couple quick questions. My first question is, I wanted to know the answers of the questions I asked at the last meeting that weren't answered. So I was hoping to get answers tonight for that. And I wanted to talk for a quick second about the fact that there may not be any big side effects from wearing a mask, but they are impacting our students. There are lots of impact on our students, the people that are hearing impaired, the people that depend on being able to see their mouth, to be able to understand what they are saying. Someone that's hard of hearing like me really, really struggles to understand folks that are wearing masks.
Could you step closer to the mic, please? And you keep the mask
And
on.
cover my mouth while I
Yes,
speak?
please.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep. So I was trying to avoid all the germs on your platform that you haven't
You don't have to
disinfected.
touch it, just
Okay.
a little bit closer. Thank you.
And then my other question is there a option for folks that do not want to wear masks to be able to participate in this meeting other than the Zoom that you can't interact with? And so I want to know what those alternatives are if you're going to provide a way to communicate and participate in this meeting if you can't wear a mask. There are people out there with trauma and with breathing issues and with hearing issues and speaking issues. So what are we going to do to be able to accommodate everyone? Those are my questions that I'd like answers to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony Plan? Our next person wanted to speak?
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Wow, what a ride, huh? I'm gonna try to see without my glasses because with the mask I can't see. The most dangerous thing today, it is really, really clear. It is the truth. Armed with the truth, we can empower others. We can change things when we have truth. The draconian measures that our government has shoved down our throat can be stopped. It will only be stopped when we are armed with the truth. We demand the truth. Only when we have the truth to fight back with. There is power in numbers. There is victory in truth. We must enlighten who have blindly marched towards the cliff of lockstep. But we must enlighten and give courage to fellow citizens who are too afraid to step out of line to question. What is going on here? But that is changing. The truth is dangerous because the truth is powerful. And that is why big tech deplatforms anyone who dares question anything, but especially COVID. COVID is a real thing and we all live with it. How much time do I have? 2
Well,
minutes?
We want to hear from each of you,
Okay,
but we're all here for a lot of other things we've got to deal with tonight also.
all right. I'll try to shorten this.
Thank you.
We are a country misguided and led astray by media that aren't honest. You would think nobody is getting vaccinated and it is a complete disaster. 90% over 65 are mostly vaccinated. Over 50, 75 to 80%. The truth you won't be told is an 85-year-old has a 10,000 times greater chance of dying of COVID than a 10-year-old. I'm going to go off script. There is research out there, and the CDC has actually come forward. I don't know if you're hearing about it yet, but the CDC is coming forward and they are saying certain things, which I can't see my notes. I'm going to go off script. The mask, the cloth mask, there is no, why I write a script?
I do too.
Very difficult. There is no the Institute of Virology, there's no thank you. I'm a man who works with my hands, not my mind. There's no evidence the cloth mask works. The surgical mask does work to a point. There is no real evidence that it really works as well. There's holes, I can feel my breath. The only real mask that works is the N95. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. I'm sure you already know all of this. Why are we masking? Is it theater? Or is it to make the next person feel safe? Have you heard of, I can't ask you questions. to say this wrong, monoclonal antibodies. Are they available? That's one way to help cure this disease. And why are we trying to say that vaccinating our children is the answer? According to the information that I've looked up, and anybody today can look information up, and there's information out there that's incorrect. It's pretty much, when you read it, you know it's wrong. And there are other outlets where the information is correct. A child has a 1 in a million chance of dying from COVID. Okay, that million child, you don't want it to be yours. I understand it. I have a child. I get it. Why are we masking? It seems to me a control factor. And I'm not saying that the board is saying this. I know you have your people that are like the CDC. There are entities that you have to answer to, and I understand that. But like has been spoken about this evening, that we should try to look into this a little further than what the CDC guidelines are. We're just asking that, and it isn't just me, there are several that don't want to be masked. And obviously because of reasons that they do not want to be identified. It's hard getting up here and standing before all the people that we work with and we know. But it has to be done. Somebody has to stand up and talk. The
We
real
need
talk.
Each of you to do that.
It's very
Can you sum
important.
up now?
I'm gonna get my notes together. I'm gonna have there's not a nice way to say it, so I won't say it, but I'm gonna have my stuff together for the next meeting. And this isn't me coming down on anyone. I understand we're doing the best we can, but the mask is very difficult to wear. And if there's no evidence that it helps, why are we doing it? Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing with us and for taking the effort to do this. Our last person that signed up, Patricia Pullen. I apologize if I pronounce any of these wrong.
My name is Patricia Poulin. I'm a resident of Manchester, and I have a child in the 4th grade at the Manchester Elementary School. I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for your service on this board. I know it's probably a lot more than you originally signed up for, and thank you during this difficult time for doing this difficult task. I want to acknowledge that there's pandemic fatigue, and my kiddo feels pandemic fatigue, and each of these quarantines is getting harder on him when he's put out of school. And I think everybody here, we all agree, want the kiddos to be in school as much as possible. And I just want to acknowledge that we understand you're under constraints from all kinds of forces outside of this room, whether it be the CDC, the federal government, the state government. And I want to thank you for doing everything in your control within those constraints to keep our kids safe. You all know that we've had staffing issues at the school, which has led to kids doing remote learning again. And I got to tell you, in my personal experience, it's getting harder and harder on our family and on our kids. And I suspect on our teachers. We read these newspaper articles all the time. I want to do a shout out for all of our administrators, our teachers, our nurses, our kiddos who are fighting through this year because it is hard and these staffing issues are closing things down. So whatever it takes to keep these schools open and these kids in the classroom, I'm going to urge you to please consider doing that. Anything we can do to keep our kids in our classrooms is, I think, of paramount importance for their learning, for their mental health.
I want to also say that there's a lot of pressure here tonight and probably elsewhere in your lives to change the rules as they are. And I just want to say we're so close, at least from my perspective, as a mom of a kiddo under 12. The vaccine is out for them. My son's had his first shot. It's going to take another shot, and then 14 days, obviously, he'll be vaccinated, fully vaccinated by Christmas. And whether or not people believe in them, I think it's only fair to let our kiddos under 12 have the same shot, the same chance to fight this virus as adults have, as far as having the vaccine available to them before you make any changes. So I'm asking you to hold on until after Christmas and let these kids under 12 have the chance to have that vaccine that just came out. Because we have heard that masks, vaccines, and pool testings are things that will keep our kids in class. I know last time you were talking about pool testing. I'm excited to hear tonight what our advances are on that. And thank you again so much for your work.
And you also for your efforts and for speaking to us. Thank you all for, yes. Thank you all for speaking and all on the board for listening. We'll now get on to the question of additions or adjustments to the agenda by the board and or the superintendent. I see none, so we'll go on to number 6. Number A, we have a celebration that Jay is going to share with us.
I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention. I just got these the other day and we made a quick change to the agenda. The MSMA holds an annual conference at the end of October. A few of our board members attended, and at that time they give out distinguished service awards. And this year they gave out distinguished service awards to our nurses. So I'd like to read you the letter, and then I'd like to just recognize our nurses publicly for what they've done. So it says, congratulations on your selection as a recipient of the 2021 MSBA Distinguished Service Award. The MSBA Board of Directors wishes to express thanks and appreciation to all of you and your colleagues during our ongoing battle with the effects of COVID-19. Operating schools during this time at best has been a challenge. However, knowing you are there providing steadying guidance during phone calls, endless contact tracing, and administrator, staff, parent, and student reassurances allowed our schools in Maine to operate at a very high level during this pandemic. MSBA honors your work as outstanding and is very eager to provide you with this recognition. So I just want to recognize each one of them publicly and what school they are at. So Sarah Morrill, who happens to be here tonight, is our health center director, and she has stepped up really big when it comes to assisting everything that our nurses are doing. At Reedfield Elementary School, that's Jada Clark. At Manchester Elementary School, that's Aaron Foth. At Maranacook Community Middle School, that's Angela Palmer. And at Maranacook Community High School, that's Anya Davidson. And again, this is a special award from the Maine School Board Association. Congratulations, and these will be delivered to them tomorrow. Thank you.
Gratitude for their continuing efforts. They and every staff member and teacher and administrator, it's a big job, and as the last speaker commented, it's wearing on everybody. So we're so grateful for that, for everyone's effort. We now have section 6B, the reports. So the way that we were going to handle reports tonight is you've got the reports in your packets. I did not ask the principals to speak, but if you've got any questions for
either the elementary, middle, or high school principals or administrators, now would be the time. We can invite them up to answer questions if you've got questions.
Yes. excuse me.
This isn't really, well, it's sort of a question, Mr. Conway. You don't have to come up. It's not really a question to answer. Hi. But I understand that the Maranacook High School girls soccer team won the state championship for the first time ever in Maranacook history. And I think that that's amazing and massive. And I'm wondering if the soccer team or representatives of the soccer team would be willing to come here or somehow receive our, recognizing them somehow.
December 1st, next board meeting.
Sweet.
Any further questions or thoughts?
We do have Steve Bose here from Adult Education, if there's any questions on his report or any questions for that program. Seeing none, I'll just ask if there's anything for Ryan Meserve, Director of Special Education. And then finally, Dr. Karen Smith for any curriculum issues or questions, I should say, not issues, questions.
Any questions for the superintendent? His report. Anything for Jay to keep it? We're now on C, committees.
Yep, if you're okay with this. So we have a curriculum, our first curriculum committee is scheduled, so that's upcoming. So we will be reporting on that shortly. We did have our first facilities committee meeting, and Rebecca has volunteered to be the reporter for that. So if it's okay, I'll turn it.
Volunteered.
That's right, volunteered. I'll turn it over to Rebecca for facilities.
That's right. So we met Tuesday and Kelly provided an update on transportation. She said that the software program's up and running and they're hoping to go live in the next couple of weeks. They've had 2 staff resignations and 4 staff are out for medical or COVID reasons. So they're having some trouble, but they're doing a really good job working with it. There's actually 1 spare driver. So once they're all back from their leaves, we should still have 1 spare. It should be good. And they are working at recruiting more. Sean gave us an update on the maintenance staff and he is down 2 positions. So they have shifted their priorities to making sure that the schools are clean and they are having staff work as much overtime as they wanted. They've posted the positions, but they haven't really had much for applications. And we also discussed how to show our appreciation to them. We reviewed the bond projects. The lighting on the fields is still being worked on and we should get an update at the next meeting. And we talked about the track resurfacing. The performing arts requests, we talked about the kilns. And the art teachers are working with Sean and they'll continue to do that to see if they can be handled through the regular budget rather than in the bond. We agreed on providing flex screens for art shows and projects where they're like collapsible screens that they can hang pictures or other displays. And 4 sound systems for the new school, for the schools. And risers too. Another set of risers. The ESSER grant, we've got an update on that. And the Mount Vernon Select Board submitted a request again. We got a request from them last year to split the cost of purchase and installation of a generator so that Mount Vernon could be used as a shelter, an emergency shelter. But the committee decided that we didn't want to bring it to the full board because it was only going to benefit 1 school. And last year the committee had felt that they didn't want to move forward with it and they still felt that way. So I think Jay has communicated with them that we're not interested. And then we discussed the rest of the meeting dates. Oh, and they're scheduling a meeting with Revision Energy so they can give us a presentation on solar options, like buying into, so we're not building a solar array or anything like that, but we're going to get a presentation on like jumping into one that's already built. That's that. Any questions?
Thank you, Rebecca. And our next policy report is from Patty, who willingly volunteered for this one. Just want to point that out.
I did. Because we did the nose thing at the thing before, so I thought. So, but Kelsey and Dane and Jay, please jump in. We talked about how policy making is done or how policy review is done and what our plan is going to be for how we would review policy this year. And we looked at a policy about reviewing policy and reviewed that. And we looked at we reviewed a couple of other policies that were things that were required, like child find and a new thing related to special education, that is use of physical restraint and seclusion. And I think all that stuff is in the packet. We talked about our work plan for the year and our meetings. But the big thing, oh, and we also, another one was workplace bullying that we talked about and reviewed. And all of that is in your packet for to read and give us comment on if you have comments on any of those things, and then we'll take them back for, for second read. And then, but the thing we need your help on is the policy about remote participation in school board meetings. Do you want to? Do I remember that you were going to say something?
Yep, we'll do it at 8A.
Okay, so we'll talk about that at 8A. So that's it. Any questions? Did I miss anything?
Thank you.
And then I know, Betty, you've been attending some of the ABS meetings. I don't know if you've had anything to report on that. Don't want to catch you flat, kind of off guard there. So if you'd like to talk about ABS, that would be great. If you don't have anything, that's fine.
I have nothing. I had asked to step out off of it, but if no one else is going to go, are you going to go, Kim?
That's me.
Okay.
Which I kind of sort of, so I made the October meeting, but I didn't make the November meeting. So I'm just going to, just a couple things to, that I would just say is one, the restrooms that have been long awaited down by the field and such were available to be used for some, I think, I can't remember what level of the playoff games, but anyway, for the girls and boys soccer playoff games that were held here. So that was exciting. And thank you to facilities who obviously that meant yet another bathroom, several bathrooms that they had to clean. So thank you to them. And the other, the ABS obviously has been lacking as far as fundraising because we haven't been able to have concessions all of last year. We did get to have soccer concessions this year, or fall sports this year. But they are doing a basket fundraiser. It is going to be available to bid on baskets. There are a wide array. I know I've seen some Bruins tickets out there. There are some Celtics tickets out there. Anyway, there are baskets put together. Each sport/extracurricular activity was creating a basket, and those will be available to give to other people for Christmas if you bid on them starting after Thanksgiving. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Very exciting, especially if you want to win some gifts that you don't have to shop for, which is where I come in.
Is it going to be online or?
It is going to be online. Yeah, I have no idea. Look, I have no idea how all that works, but yes, it is going to be online.
Share the link. Come in.
All right.
Thank you so much, Kim.
Sure.
Now we're on to 7 action items. A, we need a motion. Is correct? Yep. Motion for approval of minutes from the October 20th meeting.
I move that we approve the minutes of October 20th, 2021 meeting.
Second.
Any questions or discussion related to that? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Thank you. It passes, one abstention. Number B, acceptance of donations.
Move to
Uh,
accept the donations.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions aside from being very grateful for the donations? In not seeing any, all in favor of accepting the donations? Unanimous, thank you. C, acceptance of teacher resignation, effective December 22nd. Brianna.
I move we accept the teacher resignation of Brianna Holmquist. Second.
Any comments or questions, discussion? Yes, Shane. Oh,
Do we have another teacher in mind?
We potentially might have one already, yes. We're working on it. We're checking references right
What
now.
if we don't?
We will have one by the time. We will have one in place by the time, I'm very confident.
so I'm sorry to be losing another person, but grateful that we've got someone coming. D. Oh, excuse me. Do we have a motion?
No, we got a motion.
Oh, we have one. Okay, I'm sorry. All in favor? Unanimous. Now what we have all been breathlessly awaiting, health and safety procedures and protocols. Do we have any motions related to that so that we can then be discussing them?
Move that the RSU 38 health and safety protocols remain unchanged through the months of November and December and be reviewed again in January at the Board of Directors business meeting.
Second.
Discussions, comments, thoughts to share?
So I'd like to just let you guys know, as far as pool testing goes, we did the middle school for the first time yesterday. We were hoping to actually get results today. They will be in tomorrow morning, so we're all kind of waiting to see what that looks like. There's no pool testing in the short week because it's only 2 days. But the following week, we will be doing the middle school and Reed Field Elementary School. And then the following week after that, we will be bringing on the high school. And then we will be working on Manchester, Wayne, and Mount Vernon. So we've kind of got a staggered approach, but we're actually on the road. And like I said, we're very anxious. I texted Angela twice at the end of the day saying, have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? So we're finally on the road and we're almost there. So, and potentially December 1st, I can bring a nurse nomination to you as well, which will help speed up the process for those elementary schools. So we're moving forward and I'm feeling much better about where we're going with pool testing. Just so you guys know, I don't have the exact numbers as of today, but up to this point so far this week, we've had 2 more positive staff cases and we've had, I believe I counted right, 4 student cases. One of them in Mount Vernon required a whole class to have to go into quarantine. So it's still very, very busy when it comes to COVID right now. So
If a whole class goes into quarantine, does that mean they'll be doing remote
the
learning? for the whole
teacher,
class?
yeah, the teacher is going to be able to run that. So yeah, yeah. that's how we set it up. If the whole class is quarantined, we're running it that way. So, good question. Thank you for asking that.
So I know that just recently, some of the schools were closed down due to staffing issues, more so because we didn't have enough staff to cover. So in those cases, were we unable to find substitute teachers? I'm assuming yes. And is there any way to maybe increase the amount that we're offering substitute teachers in pay? Because I know in other school districts, that has been an opportunity for them. They've increased that pay and they've actually been able to get substitute teachers in due to the increase. I know that it's a whole funding issue, but just kind of a.
We're working on that. We're trying to see what we can come up with. So thank you very much for saying that, because it is an ongoing kind of crisis when you can't get staff in the building because they're actually testing positive. And it wasn't because staff was a close contact. It was because they were actually testing positive. 1 week we had 12 positive cases just in staff alone. And that's what started, it was like a ripple effect after that happened, because we then had 8 other staff members in other buildings that had to be out because we went remote. So they had to be out to be able to take care of their children. So it's just this ripple effect that keeps kind of rolling on down the line. And when you're looking for, in one case like that week, we were looking for 20 subs, we found 2. I mean, it's like, what do you do at that point? I've had administrators in classrooms. I've had some of the interventionists are actually in classrooms right now, which means they're not working on their intervention load. They're helping run a classroom so we can keep the classroom going. We have, I give a huge shout out to the middle school and high school teachers in particular, because they've had to let go of planning periods to go cover classes. It's just, we're really just hanging on. Today we had 6 high school teachers out and only 2 of them were filled. So then we were asking administrators and other staff in the building to cover that. We've even had secretaries go in and cover, a period or 2 just to be able to kind of keep things rolling as much as possible. So it's a very real challenge, and we are looking for any solution that we have. I know a neighboring school district is offering $150 a day. So yeah, for substitute teaching. So we know we're competing right now. So that's what we're looking at right now, is how do we compete and keep our subs here, because we have some really good subs too. So we want to keep them as much as possible. So we're working on it.
Another option, is there a way to send out information to parents and families to let them know how one would become a substitute teacher, so that maybe we can get some community involvement, and maybe there's parents or friends of parents that would step forward to go through the process of becoming a substitute teacher to maybe help out to keep our kids in school. I think it's worth a shot for parents anyways. If we had the knowledge, we could maybe encourage.
We absolutely will. We had one bring in an application today, and we were all like very excited at the office. So I think you're absolutely right. The more we can get it out there and more we can kind of advertise that we're looking will help. And we're going to take a look at the sub pay because we're competing right now. I think that's really tough. So.
Okay.
I was just wondering, there was a comment about in-school and out-of-school transmission. What are we finding? Is it both, or is it?
Yeah, I would say there's kind of both, based on what I know, and I don't know all the details like the nurses would know at this point. But I think it's a little bit of both, to be quite honest right now. None of our schools are in outbreak status. I haven't figured out why yet. Well, I know why, but a lot of our tests, a lot of our positive students, the nurses are catching with the Binex rapid test. And when we call parents, at this point, it's optional if you get a PCR test. To be in outbreak status, you actually need to have 3 PCR tests within 14 days of each other. And if it's a Binex test, for whatever reason, it doesn't count towards outbreak status. So with the way the SOP works, it's not mandatory to go get a PCR test at this point. So that's one of the things, I think that's one of the reasons why Maranicook hasn't seen outbreak status. The only school that I believe reached outbreak status, and that was right around the time that I was out with Wayne Elementary School. And Tina, correct me. November 29th, we will be out of it. November 20th, thank you, Tina. So, but that's the only school, but obviously I get a daily call right now on cases. So it's still real and it's still very, very busy right now.
So are we, based off of your comment, are we not encouraging them to do a PCR? Because then the CDCs aren't, they're not tracking those cases. They're not doing any contact tracing off of that. They're not involved in any of those steps. So I know like in my work that I do, you know, it's encouraged that we tell people you need to move forward with a PCR. If I were to test positive at work, I would get a PCR after that to confirm.
Yep. So the nurses give that information to the parents. And at that point, it's the parents that get to make the choice. So, yeah, so we do give them that information now. And we've actually helped, some of the nurses actually help them facilitate getting to a site for a PCR test. So we do as much as we can to make it as easy as we can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
I did want to just give you guys, because it's not out yet, the vaccination rate for our staff. So across the district, we're at 87.5%. This isn't in your packet. I'm reading it. Kate Taylor tracks it for us, and she gave me the numbers. So I'm just going to read them to you. So as a district, 87.5%. The high school is at 94%. The middle school is at 90%. Wayne Elementary is at 86%. Mount Vernon is at 88%. Manchester Elementary is at 85%. And Reedfield Elementary School is at 81%. The central office staff, and the way they define central office staff is transportation, substitutes, and any staff who work in multiple buildings, plus obviously the central office staff, that is 84% right now. So that's a little different. That's in the packet and it just hasn't been released yet. It's going to be released on the 15th, I believe is when it gets, no, not the 15th, sorry. I get the wrong date. I'm not even going to say it. It's coming up though. So I just wanted to let you guys know that.
I don't know if anybody saw, which day was it? Wednesday, the 10th, Kennebec Journal. There was an article about Winthrop and what they, at their emergency board meeting, what they were trying to figure out what they could do about their COVID issues. I noted that they were facing big challenges and yet they were doing the testing and mandatory masking. I really appreciated one of the student reports noted that one of the things their group were working on was discerning facts, because you can find whatever you want online and you use your common sense, as was commented on, to evaluate what you see online or from others. And then each of us, all of us, make our decisions. And I really appreciate it because we know the challenge in discerning which facts, which calculations we're going to accept to work with, that the students are learning because it's hard. There are so many pluses and minuses. We were told about something that was shared with us before, and I appreciated the study from one of the Nordic countries about masking and its effectiveness and while touching, there we go. And these things are important to me, and I went and I read it. And if you read the notes on the bottom, they're very specific, that did not attempt to or find any facts that they were applying to say that masks were not good or good for protecting others from our having the disease. It did within that, what the qualities of that study, plus or minus, find that there wasn't a significant difference in protecting me from you guys having it if I wore a mask, but it did not. So when someone quotes that to me and says, this says masks are ineffective, that's a very broad statement. We need to be careful for each of us. No matter what side we hear something from, listen to it. And then how does it apply? It was very applicable, that study, on one aspect of masks, but it did not address or try to address the other aspects. Similarly with other studies from both sides. As we all know, even if people are not lying, I'm not going to accuse anyone here or in the government of lying normally, but we're each listening and very carefully trying to do the best we can. And I definitely like that we're getting that testing set up. And I think, as Winthrop has showed, even having both, we're going to have challenges. So let's bring everything, as one of the speakers said, bring everything we can to bear to protect the children and to keep them in school. And enough of my ranting. Thank you, everybody. Is there anything else? Yes.
I just wanted to add, I know I've gotten a lot of calls, and a lot of it it's out of our control. A lot of the things, like I talked to a dad who was very upset because his daughter couldn't go to the soccer championship. That sucked. That's out of our control. I believe that children should be able to get tested to get back into school, but that's out of our control. We don't have a say here as a school board. We have a say as private citizens to right to elected officials and people making those decisions, but those things are out of our control. And to the people who have called me, emailed me, texted me, actually sending me messages right now, I hear what you're saying, but you need to go beyond us. And my role, I feel our role is to keep these children in school. And to continue on doing what we're doing is what we need to do to keep those kids in school. I wish kids could test to get back to school quicker. There's perfectly healthy kids. My son was perfectly healthy the whole time he was out of school. He was riding his bike, running up and down the street, doing schoolwork a couple hours a day because that's all the work he had. There's more beyond than what we can do. And I think I encourage the folks who are reaching out who aren't happy kids have to wear masks or aren't happy kids have to quarantine for 10 days when they're perfectly healthy to get involved and make your voices heard to your elected officials in Augusta. And my kids tell me, Dad, we want to stay in school. We hate it when we have to stay home. My son cried every day last week because he couldn't be in school because he wants to learn. He got about 2 hours of learning every day. It's nobody's fault. Everybody's working as hard as they can. My wife missed a week of work. I mean, everybody is working as hard as they can, but the kids want to be in school, and that's our job, to make sure they stay in school and stay healthy. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but some things don't add up. The studies don't add up. You can get certain, if you're COVID, you can come to school if you're a close contact and be in school, be in the lunchroom, but you can't be on the soccer field. That does not make sense. That is not science. Thank you. That is not science. No one is going to prove that you're safer in the lunchroom than you are on the soccer field. That is not science.
So.
Okay, thank you for getting to the root of these problems. It's crazy, isn't it? So I guess I have a question for you guys to help me understand better, what we're what we're held to. What are our boundaries before there's loss of state funding? Like what are our parameters here and what we can say goodbye to, what we can adapt? I don't even know what that looks like really on paper. I just know that the CDC runs the world now. And I know that there's suggestions, but I don't know really what is law. Dave, you've been so good about this. Can you whip it out for me or anybody for that matter? But what do we have to abide to before we have a consequence like state funding? That's what's coming to mind right now. Just to see what kind of realistic room we have to work with here, because something's going to give at some point. And I just would like to know what we actually can and can't do in black and white.
So the short answer is it's my job to bring and expect compliance from our staff when it comes to following the standard operating procedure that has been defined at the state level. I'm going to say this very frankly and openly. I don't want to be that school that pushes those boundaries because that's a political discussion that has nothing to do with the kids. And I really appreciate that several people sat here and said, we want to keep schools open and we want to make sure that as many kids as possible are in. I don't want to be that school that's in the paper because we're not following the rules. There have been a couple of those schools and things have been at risk, like sports. And I know of one particular case that it really blew up and that school system had a big powwow with the state. I don't know the results of that. I don't want to know the results of that. That's not what I'm about. I'm about making sure the kids are here at school, and that's kind of where I fall. I'm not up for pushing the boundaries. I'm going to be very honest with you guys. That's not what I'm about. It's about the kids and keeping them in school. So, so the short answer is, if we start pushing the boundaries, you're going to put me in a really awful position. And I want to protect this district's reputation as being about kids and living our mission. And I know it's not perfect. I'll be the first one to admit it. And I hear Sean, Dane, even Kelsey, we've had conversations about, well, wait, what? And that's fair. I just, I want to keep the schools open as much as possible, and I want our kids here, and I want them to be able to have as close to normal as possible. And again, I know it's not perfect, and I know this isn't going to endear me to some people, but that's what my job for you guys is to do. It's not to push the boundaries politically, because I'm not going to do that. So I just want to be very open and honest about that.
Well, we appreciate that, Jay. Those are the truths that need to be heard.
Is there a way we can take a look at, not to get off topic with COVID, but it kind of relates, the food that's being served in the schools?
Reach.
I think that, I mean, I'm not, but like in corn, I hear corn dogs a lot. And, my kids love it, but I don't know how healthy and nutritious that.
Well,
I would love to have that conversation.
milk makes you look like that. Woo, can we get some milk? I'm like, what the heck? Oh, but,
So I'm sorry, Kelsey, I wish it was a simple black and white answer.
well, no, that's okay. And where my mind goes with that train is, in talking to a lot of members of the community, like, Jesus, the kids are out again, and it puts pressure. You guys all know, we don't have to even talk about it. The parents have to take the time off work. No one's got sick time, paid leave. It's hurting wallets. It's a whole thing. I'm in this boat as well. It's a whole thing. And so they're saying, why the heck are my well kids repeatedly going home? And our whole MO across the board, doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, is keep kids in school. So I'm like, well, maybe we can make our own rules, and we're going to put all the kids in school. And if it's your choice to keep your kid in school without all these crazy rules, imagine that.
but I understand the repercussions are a huge pushback from state policy. And I don't know what these repercussions are, so it's hard for me to like make a stand in any way without, I guess, knowing all of this. I've got to research that more, but I appreciate you stating your spot in that and what that looks like.
And if I may, Sean mentioned a situation. I really, really encourage athletes in middle school and high school to participate in food testing, because if they're participating in food testing and they are close contacts, they can continue to play sports. So I really, really think it's important that they think carefully about that, because I think that there's a piece there that allows a little bit of a wiggle room exception wise. I know it always comes with a caveat, but we can avoid some situations and, you know, by participating. I'm not saying you have to be fully vaccinated and all that. I'm not going to get into that. That's the parent's choice, but by participating in pool testing, there's a little bit of wiggle room there now for participating in sports and being able to kind of live a more normal life, or I say life, I'm sorry, school experience. So it's there. So it's not perfect. Again, I'll be the first one to admit.
Since you brought up school sports and winter sports start next week, I think, or at least tryouts. What has the MPA made? I'm sure there's something.
No, they actually just came out with something today, and I'm going to ask Grant to give you guys a presentation December 1st because it just came out today. So, but what we had planned on doing mirrors what the MPA put forth for recommendations. So,
do we know what? So between now and December 1st, there are going to be lots of tryouts / practices happening. What do those
so
look like?
everybody's wearing masks right now when they're participating in sports. The only sport the MPA, for obvious reasons, said you don't need a mask for swimming. So but everybody else is expected to wear masks for practices and competitions. So, yeah, Doug, don't let that sidetrack you from this particular motion, because we will talk about this on December 1st. Grant's going to bring a full presentation because it just came out today. So I apologize that we're not more prepared, but it just came out today. So
This question was asked to me because it was in the paper about a neighboring school that was pool testing. I know it just came out, but this was that. Is pool testing a part of the, I haven't had a chance.
they are recommending, the recommendation from the MPA is that all student athletes participate in pool testing and be vaccinated. That's their recommendation, obviously. So,
Thank you.
And it's not an or.
right.
Okay.
Right. So we're going to be doing, we talked briefly about this, but we're looking at home spectators only. They're leaving that as a local decision. What we had talked about, and we're kind of getting a field, but what we talked about was if the transmission rate goes down, opening up more to allow more spectators. If our transmission rate can go down as a county. So.
And that's up to the athletics department at this point,
That's
correct?
right. We, the administrators and Grant Remington, we sit and we talked. So we had Kristen, Wayne, myself, and Grant there and talked about what it meant for the schools. Yeah, so, but Grant will talk both about middle school and high school because it is a little different because of the size of the gyms and all that kind of stuff. But we are getting there, so I apologize. And that's very like off the top of my head, so.
Any more questions or comments on the motion?
Can you please repeat the motion?
I move
I
that
move that the RSU 38 health and safety protocols remain unchanged through the months of November and December and be reviewed again in January at the Board of Directors business meeting.
Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. All against? Any abstentions? Motion has passed.
Number 8.
Brings us to number 8. The policies, the sample policies. Particularly remote participation in school board meetings.
As Patty had said, we felt it was important to bring this forth to the full board before we recommended a read. Because there's a few things that you want to pay attention to when it comes to a remote policy. So first of all, this body can decide, yes, we want remote meetings, or no, we don't want remote meetings. If you don't want remote meetings, then there's no need for a policy. You just kind of continue the way we've been doing business pre-pandemic. If you want to have remote meetings that allow participation by board members who are out, who are not here, then you must make sure you fall within 4 criteria according to the law, which is stated in this policy. So I'm just going to point them out to you guys very quickly. So for example, we were in a state of emergency last year. The state of emergency is off. So in order to be able to hold a board meeting, one of the kind of exceptions to be able to be fully remote would be a declared emergency or some other emergency. I did ask MSMA for a little bit of guidance here. So whether a weather event could be an emergency that would force us to be fully remote, we can do that. So again, that would be allowable per our policy. The second one would be board member who's ill or has a physical condition that requires a temporary absence from being able to meet in person. So again, illness is a good thing to think about. This particular number 2 under the policy, we would want to define what would be acceptable as a board as to what we would say would be acceptable for an individual board member to be remote. So some of the things that we had talked about was like illness, perhaps childcare. Those might be acceptable reasons, and we would have to come up with a procedure of how does that board member communicate that to the board chair to be able to be remote. So those are a couple we had talked about. Number 3 is if significant distance for a member, it makes them impossible to be able to travel to the meeting itself. So I know he's not here tonight, but Tyler is a good example of a person who could be remote because of his attendance at his college, but he could still attend remotely because physically he can't get here quickly and easily, so to speak. The fourth one doesn't apply to us, but it basically says you have geographic characteristics that impede or slow travel. This one was really put in for like the island schools off the coast of Maine. So that's kind of where that falls as far as number 4 goes. So one of the really important points to mention to the board is the intent of the law is to still have in-person board meetings. They really want to kind of get back to that. And that's kind of what we did last year. We did a really good job with that. But it doesn't have a clause for, oh, it's kind of cold tonight and dark and I really don't want to go out. Like we wouldn't be able to do, like a board member couldn't do that. So you'd have to have a reason that would be board approved in order to be able to say you can't be at the board meeting or you want to attend remotely, I should say. Something else to think about is if one board member is remote, then we have to allow remote participation in some capacity. Now the board can decide what that remote participation looks like. It could be they speak, online from Zoom, it's open and they raise their hand and they say what they want. It could be you actually put your comment in the chat box and the chair might read the comments at the end, before the public participation session is over. And there's other ways that you could do that as well, but you have to allow some kind of remote participation if even one board member is remote. The other thing that we would have to do is we would have to do all votes through a roll call vote. I'm sure all of you guys remember that, how that works. And we would actually probably reorder it so poor Kim isn't the one having to go first all the time.
Thank you.
But we have to do roll call votes on everything, so.
So is that only if a board member is remote or is it at all
Exactly.
meetings?
Just if there's
If
a remote.
there's a remote
right,
board member, okay.
Exactly. And I just want to be very honest. I'm going to actually pause for a second. I missed one little bullet point. We would not be allowed to have our annual budget meeting remote. That's specifically like against the rules. The annual budget meeting needs to be an in-person meeting, just so that you guys know.
We did that during the pandemic, right?
We did.
Like that? Okay.
Yep,
Yep.
we absolutely did. One of the things that I want to point out also is there is probably going to be a little bit of a cost to this. You can see the equipment around the room. You notice that we've got two people, Diane being one of them, and Bill is the other one that's helping us out. But if we're going to have remote access, there is probably going to be a cost to that, because we'll need somebody they take time to set it up and they have to have time to take it down. So you're probably looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 4-ish hours of overtime if we're using a school employee or if we're contracting out like we do with Bill at budget time. That's going to be a cost that we will have to kind of absorb as we're doing this. So I just want to be clear about that. So it's not a surprise. It's not a ton of money, but there is a little bit of a cost and it's going to be overtime if we're using staff or if we're contracting out. So just wanted to be very clear about that going forward. So the policy committee at this point, if you guys want to jump in, we were looking for a little bit of guidance and feedback on how we wanted to proceed with this so that we can, I know we were looking at how can we get remote meetings up and running. So it's really important that we kind of know as a policy committee where to go and what we want to put. And I know Kelsey, Patty, or Dane, if you guys want to add anything, feel free to do that, or if you have any comments about that. We're just looking for some input. Do we want to move forward with this? And
Can I ask one more question first? So we mentioned that the board member who was remote would have to have a way to participate in some
Yes.
form. One of the citizens' comments asked if there would ever be a way for community members. Is that
we
off
have
the table?
to, no, we have to include that if it's remote, we have
Okay.
to include
So
that.
if we go remote, both board members and community members would be able to participate.
Yes.
As long as a board member is remote.
Yes.
If no board members are remote, then nobody can participate remotely.
Right.
Even if we're streaming or
Right.
whatever. Okay, got it.
So I guess, would that mean, gosh, almost right up until a meeting is kind of when we'd be able to make that call,
Yeah.
really for the public's
Right.
sake anyway?
We would like, I know we didn't kind of do that tonight, but I think what we would have to do is, as soon as the meeting starts, acknowledge there is a remote participation or there is no remote participation. But it would be, like in my mind, we're setting up as if all meetings are going to be remote and then making that call once we know how it's,
Could we include in the policy that a board member that wants to be remote has to let us know by a certain time? Or do they literally come and literally let us know up until board meeting?
No, I would
This
say
starts.
it's very fair to put like a time limit and say we need to know by like, I'm just making.
Because that way the public would know too, whether or not they'd
Exactly.
be able to participate and
Yeah,
therefore
we
we
could
may
put
or may
that
not
out.
get
Right.
more or less participation.
Right.
It seems like a time would be fair.
I think it would be.
I mean, you're gonna know
Yeah.
before the 1 minute before the meeting.
Is there a way to include citizen participation for every meeting, whether a board member is online or not? So that if someone was at home and they had a citizen comment, that they could make that comment in that portion of the agenda?
That's up to this board to decide that. there's nothing in law that says you have to. So I'm just gonna put that out there. If you guys decide you want to do that, then we would have to make that
I just
clear.
think that's an important point that we keep bringing up, that we want people to come and talk to us. And if we make it easier for them to do that, maybe we'll have more participation.
And that legal intent to, as much as possible, keep board members at the meeting is not expanded to the public.
Right.
Okay.
I think just a couple of comments. I mean, obviously there's pros and cons to both. I think a huge pro, especially right now, is members who have to be out because they've been exposed to COVID or they currently have COVID. Anybody who's immunocompromised, who really, can't be in this room, it gives them the opportunity to have a voice. Be able to communicate with the board and let them know kind of what's going on with them too, because they can't be here for, a variety of different reasons. But there's also, the drawbacks of it too as well. How do we get people to sign up to make their comments like we do in this instance? Would they be required, if we're saying, okay, we're going to give the board until, end of business the day before a meeting, you notify families that you can attend by Zoom, but you have until before the meeting starts to email and let us know that you plan to participate or make a comment. Like we do here, you're supposed to sign up if you want to be an active participant, because then we kind of have an idea of how many people we're going to be having making comments throughout, so that we can say, okay, we have enough time that we can take, 5 minutes for you and 5 minutes for you, or we have 20 people who want to make a comment because now we have a broader, availability to people. We really need to keep to a time of, a 2-minute comment. I think there's just kind of a lot that goes into play with it, but I do think that there's a lot of pros to it because it does open up, especially right now, the availability for board members to participate, for families at home to participate, because I know there's a lot of people that want to have a voice, but they're stuck at home because their kids quarantining and, they have COVID or whatever the case may be.
So I think what I'm hearing about, is it manageable to make it so the public can participate every meeting via Zoom or not? I guess that's the question. If it's not manageable, then we can't do it. But if it is manageable, I think we want, or at least I can speak for myself, I want as much public input as possible. So I think to simplify it, every meeting, my belief is, should be available to the public to participate via Zoom. And if a board member wants to participate via Zoom, they let you know within a timely fashion, an hour before or 2 hours before, or whatever it takes, and they can participate.
But the board members should follow one of these three.
Yeah, right. And that's our responsibility, just like any other board rules.
And if we're having it open to the public, every time, then we might not even have to have advance notice from the board because it'll be open anyway.
Well, I was just,
Most people have.
I just wanted to, I just think advance notice would be good, because if 4 people need to participate, or 5 people, and there's only 3 people sitting, I just think it's good for that. That's where I'm at with this.
I'm a bit biased about this subject. I would have lost 3 to 4 months of coming to board meetings if we hadn't had the option of being remote. So I think that we should, for illness that where I was not able to come to board meetings otherwise, at least I was able to participate through Zoom. I was very strongly for severe illness, whatever, that we have that option.
Based on what Sean said in terms of the manageable part, and obviously Diane, you guys could probably answer that better from when we were remote, but do we have to have a policy in place to know before we can try it?
Yes.
Like, could we do a test to see if it truly is manageable? Or if we make a policy that says everybody can participate and then it becomes unmanageable, what happens?
So just a quick answer, we can't do anything until we have a policy in place. But I also think we can revisit the policy if we find that there's some tweaking that needs to be done here. We can absolutely revisit.
Quickly.
Yes, yes.
If they're getting like 65 hands out there.
Yeah, I know we've been talking about this, but can we decide right now what is a reasonable time to call out 24 hours? I know there's been some times where you can't make it, you're stuck in traffic somewhere. 2 hours, I keep hearing different things, but what do you think is a reasonable?
COB, end of the school day.
Say that again.
End of the school day.
End of the school day.
3 o'clock.
I would like it to be a little bit more flexible. The only reason is because I had one of these board meetings early on. I was literally driving my daughter to emergency and I knew an hour before, but I didn't know, I mean, it was 5 o'clock and the meeting's up, so I guess I knew an hour and a half before.
So,
Well, if we're going to Zoom anyway, no matter what,
Right.
there really doesn't need to be a cutoff for the
board.
For the board. member,
Right.
but out of courtesy,
Yeah.
you know, common courtesy.
As soon as, like I would say, common courtesy, as soon as you know, let us know.
Like-
kind of thing.
So as far as the policy goes, we're good with these, and basically a state emergency, an illness that prevents you from coming, or you can't physically be here.
So we should try by the end
Are
of
there
the day.
any other that we'd add? Is that good?
I would advocate for childcare just because.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
I don't want to really confine those reasons because there's so many reasons that could come up that are appropriate for that. So I would like to just have it be at the discretion of that board member and the chair or superintendent or the three of them, really.
I think the only thing that really concerns me about that is you're not going to get people who are going to show up, right? So if you open it up to be more broad and, let it be at the discretion, like, oh, hey, I don't feel like going tonight, so I'm going to go online. That's what it's going to turn into is eventually it's just going to become so lax if we really lower those standards in the beginning. I think that the goal should be to have our board members here because obviously in person is a lot better and I feel it gets our point across a lot more than being remote. So I think really encouraging that and kind of limiting the excuses of, of why we couldn't attend or whatnot, to stuff that's pretty significant. I feel like illnesses and things like that, I think is important.
Could illnesses be expand to personal emergencies or incidents?
That would be better.
So it, and
That's more palatable.
then if someone starts to make a habit of it, like I really
Well,
like
if-
just sitting at home and doing it on the TV.
If it's a habit, it becomes a problem, then it should be addressed anyway.
Yeah.
And we are all adults, so we should be able to police ourselves and do the right thing.
I would like weather to be mentioned just because.
Yes.
I mean, I'm from Manchester, not that that's far, but
Yeah.
I'm a wimp when it comes to driving in crappy weather.
Yeah.
So. I
So
would
that,
just
that
like
falls
weather
under
being-
number
okay.
one,
All
even though it's a state declared emergency, the weather conditions is also part of
Okay.
that. So, good.
And so we could apply that individually. For instance, I may be willing to drive my car into a guardrail, but you don't want to do that.
I don't want to drive my car into a guardrail. No,
So
I
you
don't.
would say no, and I would say yes.
Well, and
we'd
in
allow it.
fairness, it also
So we're
depends on
doing
the car, right? Some people have teeny tiny cars that aren't gonna make it.
So what I would suggest, what I'd like to suggest, based on what I've heard, I think Patty, Kelsey, and Dane, we've kind of, I think, got enough to work with. What I'd like to do is pull this committee together for a quick meeting before the Thanksgiving break. And what we'll do is draft this up and make sure everything sits the way it needs to. And I'd like to bring it December 1st. And then what the board can do procedurally is actually do a first read and a second read. So then we could actually implement it in January. And we'll get the procedures so that we do that the way we're supposed to. We'll get the procedure, but we could get it ready, bring it December 1st, so that way we have it in place for January.
In January is the next time we discuss
Right.
the
Yes.
health and safety protocols, right? So that would be a perfect
Yeah.
test almost.
Would it be, Dan, would it be manageable if you, in the comment section, you started off the meeting with whatever that sign up sheet says? And we kind of put it out there to the public that when you join Zoom, you have to just sign your name in like you would here.
Yeah, we actually had a process.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
actually worked out
Yeah.
well, that Jay and I can discuss, but it's
Thank you.
So if everyone's good with that, I'll reach out to the policy committee members. I think it'll take all of 15 or 20 minutes, and we can have something for you December 1st.
So we're just adding childcare issues and
Yes.
every meeting be easy.
Policy committee.
You took those notes? Good job.
I'm her secretary.
Or, yeah, thank you, Ms. Morgan. I thought it was not necessarily specific. Doesn't matter, we can talk about it.
And then, next, we have 8B, report to board members who attended the MSMA Fall Conference.
So for the sake of time, Kathy's not here today. She sent one of the handouts that she had. We're not going to read it through. It had to do with a lot of the law changes. So it's in your packet, and we're not going to read it to you. It's like 12 pages long. So I'm sure you guys are fine with that. I just wanted to share one of the sessions that I went to was called "I'm Just the Messenger," which I think it was very timely. It's a great presentation about how to establish guidelines, make sure you're listening to all sides, how to make sure you're speaking civilly to each other, and using timeouts if you needed, if things get heated. And they had several strategies on how to do that. I'm not going to go over everything with you here, but I certainly have that handout if anyone would like to see the handout or discuss it in any way. From my point of view, the conference was a really good one this year. It was, they did a fantastic job with it, and the sessions were more timely. One of them was I went to the policy one as well, because I thought I needed to review, so that was really helpful as well moving forward. So it was a really good conference, and I'll just kind of leave it at that for the sake of time. And if anyone needs any of the handouts or would like to talk about any of the sessions, it's actually still open through the end of this week. So I can certainly let you know and or get you handouts if you'd like to just review some information. But it was a great conference. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, then do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, everyone.